So I started teaching in 1995 at Kelvin Park High School, which is Fullerton and Costner, also on the northwest side. And so kind of stuck around there, grew up in the city and the North Shore as well. One of the things I would like for us to do today is it's a pretty small group, just kind of get to know one another. Ultimately, what I would like is that we use each other as a resource. I think that a lot of times when we go to these PDs, you hear maybe an individual just kind of ramble on and on about whatever the topic is at hand, and it might be best to somewhat like sit with groups, small groups, reflect, and just kind of go over the material. So it's not just me being this teacher. I think a lot of times we see our students tend to get more out of it when we break them up into small groups, and you see some leadership roles grow out of there. Please come on in, grab a seat. All right, so if you were to look at page 107 here, you can see the matrix for social studies. What I'd like for us to do, or like at each table, is see how this applies to your students, but also see how it applies to you as the educator, the leader in the classroom. All right, and if we want to take the U.S. or the world group and even split you up in half, I think I can move that table over that way just so that everyone kind of has a voice. And, you know, I'm going to do that versus give you guys the option. So I'll split you up a little because it is a pretty substantial size group, and I'd like to have everyone have a voice here. So if we could look at just for maybe the next 10 minutes or so, how does this apply to your students right now? And one of the things to keep in mind is not everything has to apply to your kids right now, but I think, you know, and then have a conversation with some of the people around you. Just like, oh yeah, this is what I do in my class, and I see how it applies here to freshman world studies or AP world history or American history at the 4th grade level, that type of thing. So I'm going to set this table up and split up the world group. I see that a lot of us are really into this, and I think that's great. And there's some great conversations taking place. However, one of the things I would like for us to do by the end of the day, like I would like everyone to walk out with something saying, like, in the next 2 weeks, here's what I'm going to plan. This is what I was going to do in my class anyway, but here's how maybe I'm going to tweak what I'm going to do in the next 2 weeks. You know, a lesson, working with the individuals around you, and part of it is bringing back the global competence here. A big part of it is perspective, or, you know, a point of view. And so one of the things that I sometimes tell my students is, whenever you're going into a discussion, a debate, or whatever, you want to know what the other side is thinking, right? You want to know where they're coming from. And depending on the situation, you want to outwit them, right? I mean, like if you're having a debate, you want to be able to like take the facts that they have in hand and use that and outwit them. And then, you know, some of my kids are like, well, that you're just trying to finish someone off that's like Machiavellian. It's like, you could see it that way, most definitely, right? Like you're trying to take advantage of a weakness they have. But that's not really the goal of this, obviously. The goal of this is to have us look at other people, other individuals, you know, from all over the world, and whatever the topic is at hand, and ultimately have our students see that person X is an individual, I'm an individual. We have common goals, common ideas, you know, common concerns of the world, right? But how do you apply that to U.S. history? You know, how do you apply that to world history? I mean, I think that in a majority of our schools, there are certain skill sets that are being like drilled into us, right? Like, what are you going to do in your class to make sure that the reading score goes up, or that their writing improves, that type of thing. So you have to be able to apply both, and they're not. Even though I'm saying they're two different things, they're really they come together, right? Like the product that gets ultimately handed into you, or the audience, be it maybe it's a school salon that the students put on for parents to come in to raise money for cancer awareness, or whatever, you know, the students kind of choose. I mean, that's kind of the bigger part. And, you know, I like to have my students do research, but sometimes they don't even realize they're really doing research. You know, do I want to read 40, 50, 60 research papers on the scientific revolution? Person X did this, person Y did that, so on and so forth. It's like, great, you can look at Wikipedia and, you know, take those shortcuts. So like, how do I make that interesting for my students, but also give them those skills that they're going to need? The word that was brought up earlier was authentic. How do we make these things authentic? All right. So and like one of the things that I've learned over the years from going to PDs, you know, similar to this, where you're just talking to other people and hearing what it is they do in their class and seeing like, here's how I can tweak it for my class. All our students, yours, mine, no matter what school they come from, ultimately want to get a job. They want to get some sort of internship, right? And they have to be able to present themselves as this person that you should select for this job, for this summer internship, right? So why not apply that to the scientific revolution? You're thinking, like, how do you do that? Well, you say Francis Bacon is going to apply for this entrance into the Academy of Sciences, all right? You're going to do research for Francis Bacon. You're going to write this letter. The students need to know how to compose a letter. And take that information about Francis Bacon and convince the Academy of Sciences that your individual should be admitted into this elite group, right? That's a skill that your kids, they're doing the research, they're learning how to write a letter, and then ideally, they're going to take that and apply it to themselves to help them down the road. You know, another component of that is creating a resume. I mean, all of us have created a resume. It's like prior to applying for a job, when else did you create a resume? Anyone? I didn't. Like, suddenly I'm out of college, went to the college resource, like, I need to get a job, I need to pay for my student loans. How do we become a teacher? You know, like, I observed, student taught, there was no one was there to help me do some of that stuff. And so, going back to your 9th graders, let's say, or even 7th, 8th graders, like, have Francis Bacon come up with a resume. What's his objective? What's his experience? What works has he created? Like written. That's the type of stuff that we put in our resumes, right? I mean, you probably, ideally, would put going to this conference as one of your professional developments on your resume if you're looking for a job. The fact that I was asked to speak at something like this, is an honor, but at the same time, this is something that's kind of cool that I can put on my resume, right? For that next job that I'm looking for. And as adults, we have more experience, but why not give those kids, our students, those tools? And have them apply this, what we're teaching them. We're still getting content in, right? We're still helping them write. But we're taking all that information and doing research, but we're taking that and we're applying it to the individual, the student individual, so that they can use those skills down the road. Right? And then they have to understand, and can you do all of the, and I think one of the points that was brought up at the meeting downstairs was, you can't do all of these in one class or in one lesson or one unit. And no one's asking you to, But what you want to do is be able to take components of the stuff and give those tools to your students and help them down the road. Help them understand where person X is coming from, where person Y is coming from, right? Sometimes I use the example with my students of the homecoming dance. I have a freshman class, a couple freshman classes. They all went to the homecoming dance. It was the greatest dance they've ever been to, blah, 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 going on and on about how cool this was. And then you talk to a senior who's done this for 3 years now, their 4th dance. It was the lamest party they've ever gone to, right? I mean, it was the exact same dance, right? But then having my freshmen start looking at this for multiple, how did the senior view this dance? Why did you view it so differently? And then just taking that small, local, laser beam, focus, and applying that to the rest of your classes, or the rest of the content, and looking at it globally. Do you have to leave the classroom to do all? No, you don't. I mean, I heard someone say at their school they have where they can study abroad or they can travel abroad at spring break or something like that. It's fantastic. Not all schools can do that type of thing, right? But my hope is that we here in this classroom are a resource for one another. At my school, have a distance learning lab. All right? So basically, it's fancy video conference. So if this was done in one of our classrooms, we can have this televised to Guadalajara, Mexico, if you want. If there was someone there that wanted to see this. But why not ask me, hey, I found this really cool thing that I'd like to do with my students, but we don't have the technology at my school. Here's how it could be global. Here's, you gave us a spiel, we sat all day to hear about this global stuff. Can we use you as a resource? Can we use your lab? And I can tell you right now, our lab, our video tech guy wants to use that stuff. If it was up to him, he'd use it 8 periods a day, every single day. But he can't, because we don't always have the time in our classes. There's so much we have to cover. But sometimes, it's that one unique experience that really helps our kids out and maybe engages them a little more. I'm sure that all our students are engaged, but even when we were downstairs, if you looked around the room and when the window opened and the video was playing, I think most of us were focused on the closing, the gentleman right here closing the window, right? Honestly. Or if you look are on, like some of us are tired and closing our eyes, and so we got to keep you stimulated. And I don't want to spend this whole time talking to you guys about all this stuff. So I'm going to give you an example of what I did with one of my classes, and this is a very brief overview. And I feel this personally, this is something that can be adjusted to all of our classrooms. Like I said, I like to use the word tweak a lot, and perhaps I should be taken the wrong way. Hopefully there's no. Yeah. So what you have here is a character study, the historical night. So actually, like a year ago, when I went off to Houston for the Asia Society, now I told my group, like, here's what I want to do. Here's the ideas that I have. And it was the individuals there that helped me along the way. And I think, quite probably, a lot of you have done something similar to this. All right? In my 20th century class, we look at the Cold War, basically why it is the world is the way it is today. All right? And one of the things I have my students do is read a biography of an, so this is upperclassmen, juniors and seniors. Is there a chance that these juniors and seniors are going to skip the biography and go straight to Wikipedia and encyclopedia and Cliff Notes, whatever? Yeah, there is, right? But they're still reading that stuff. They're still gathering information. And there are going to be the students that are going to read the biography and are really going to enjoy all this stuff, right? And so, in this, I hope that there's meaningful research, and then they can view whoever their character is, and the list of characters at the bottom, there's 37 characters, from that unique point of view. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, how are you able to incorporate Facebook into this?
Well,
what hurdle did you have to surpass?
I had a student tell me about a proxy website I had to download it at home, because as we all know in CPS you can't have Facebook, right? And I never used Facebook before, so that was a big hurdle for myself.
Okay.
But ultimately, the kids all know how to do back and end runs to get Facebook at school and YouTube and all sorts of stuff. And I said, I don't want to get anyone in trouble. I just want to know how to do this so that in class, even if it's downloaded onto my laptop and you're doing your post as we're having a discussion, doing whatever, that's fine. Like, I just want us to have this conversation. I want Fidel Castro talking to John F. Kennedy, you know, putting something on his wall or whatever, posting, you know, that type of stuff. I think in the future, one of the things I thought about in the future is taking like a big pad of paper, having the kids write the basic stats. Like, here's the picture of this person, here's what they like, you know, they're into democracy and freeing the world and, you know, all sorts of information. Just putting that down on paper and having that posted around the room so that kids can visually see it again and again. But I think it varies, because not every kid had technology in high school, which I learned about after the fact. Or in a couple cases, I'm not allowed to have Facebook. Can you like tell my parents that I need to have Facebook for this project? And so there were some hurdles along those lines. But I think you definitely can do it where, actually I have an Excel, I'm going to give my email out at the end here, where a teacher at another school gave me an Excel sheet where you could do Facebook on your Excel page. Or it's not obviously a live, up-to-date type thing, but it's a file that people can add to.
And your interaction with it?
So what I ended up doing, so you can't create a website, or you can't create a Facebook site with John F. Kennedy.
Right.
It's against Facebook laws
right,
or whatever.
Right.
So there's John F. Kennedy hyphenated Minacho, which is my last name. So if you look, there's like Pol Pot Minacho, and there's Saddam Minacho Hussein, and there's like Minacho will show up if you were to look at, do a Facebook look, I guess. You would see all these individuals that created these fake sites. I don't know if that's illegal or not. Maybe I should have looked into that now that I've put it out there.
I heard the same idea from where somebody did the Roman Empire this way, and that's what they did. They created
like fake false names, yeah. And it's not a new idea. To me, it was a new idea. And you know, this is how I applied it to my kids. But I mean, here's an example where someone else had done it.
Well, there are some concepts in Facebook that make sense of it. So you friend certain people, and you don't friend other people.
Exactly.
Right? So that was a logical social dynamic for this media that they created.
And part of that is having our students understand why it is you friend this person and not this person over here, right? Or why you would write this on this person's wall.
and this on the other person's wall, that type of thing. And start thinking about those events and whoever their individual was that they chose, and looking at that person in terms of, like, and I have the lingering question here, did the man shape the times, or the times shape the man? You know, and what were their connections with all these other individuals during this Cold War period? And in some cases, you know, Ronald Reagan, even though he didn't, that I know of, like, have personal connections with Truman, some of the ideas that Truman had, Ronald Reagan might put on and think, hey, this was a great idea, you know, the Truman Doctrine and fighting communism in Greece and Turkey before it spread throughout the rest of the world. You know, and so they were allowed to start kind of thinking kind of outside of the box, even though their individuals didn't necessarily overlap. And so, as it goes on there, you know, obviously that's a public display of knowledge for me, but we weren't going to Facebook the whole school, or, you know, and some of the kids actually did make friends with, like, students in other classes so they can see what they were doing. But, so as you go down here, you can see that we eventually met in a salon, a setting much like this, where we were our characters, whoever that character was. I was the person who was just going to help moderate. I gave students a bunch of questions on the wall to consider, like, you know, how does it, you know, September 11th, how would your person have reacted to the situation today? Or the war in Afghanistan? You know, just things that would help them talk about and start thinking about it from person X's point of view. Like, how would they assess this situation, or whatever, you know, whatever is at hand. And then, as you go along, there's students who created historical songs. So I got this idea from, anyone know of Monty Python?
Yes.
Yes? Oliver Cromwell? Right? So I'm like, this is fantastic. Like, you learn so much from Oliver Cromwell, the song Oliver Cromwell, Monty Python. You can apply that to, and I have applied that to a lot of my classes. I just had kids do it recently for absolutism and constitutionalism in my European history class. You know, like, our students are creative, you know, and so sometimes it's delving into that. Are they doing research to write the song? Yeah. Are they thinking that they're really doing research? No, they're all about, like, am I going to do it to this beat or to this song? Or, you know, you have to remember it's to, like, what the student, like, some cartoon, I don't remember the cartoon, honestly. Like, you have to know Fairly Odd Parents or something, some cartoon. You know, I don't know this. But, well, so then they brought me the CD so I can listen to the songs as I write the lyrics and stuff. It was funny, and, you know, it gives the students an opportunity who don't necessarily think of writing in the same way, but they're getting their thoughts down. And in some cases, it's getting that student who struggles a lot just to get their thoughts down in some sort of creative fashion. I have the Facebook page, obviously. An obituary I thought was interesting. I just, once again, stole that from someone else. People die. People write, you know, it's like, give me an obituary about this person that you have. Look at the newspaper. Look at obituaries that were actually written already. You know, that type of thing. A character sketch was more along the lines of a synopsis, concise, couple paragraphs about your person, so that we could pass that around the table so people can get a little something about whoever, if you had Margaret Thatcher, you know, when she was around, that type of thing. The resume and job that I talked about, the scientific revolution, I just applied it to this. And a collage for the visual student. You know, there are pictures out there that represent what Pol Pot did. Right, and some of them are graphic, and obviously it varies from class to class. I mean, in this class, we do a lot of human rights discussion as well. Down the road, we read a book called "A Problem from Hell: Genocide in the Age of America" and stuff, which looks at the idea of genocide. We had the Holocaust. We said never again. The creation of the word genocide, and then you have Darfur, you have Bosnia. You know, and having students kind of reflect on events today, things that happened during your lifetime. Sir?
How do you judge collages? Because I've had students do it. They'll go to Google Images and, you know, just put a whole bunch of images on there.
So with the collages, the way I like to tell them is that it has to tell me a story. Oh, so collages, because I'm not that creative, have very little in terms of point value. It was more of, like, the students having the opportunity to put something like that out there. You know, I tell them about space. You know, just there shouldn't be a bunch of blank space. I mean, the idea of a collage, in my opinion, is like pictures on top of other pictures, and, you know, even if it's showing just a small bit of someone's skull, like, let's say, well, that's okay, you know, but that's representative of this person's regime, right? And so, I mean, you're not telling a third grader to do that. You know, it might be something about George Washington and, you know, the pictures, symbols that represent this person. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so how much time did it take for you to build them up to get to this point, leading to the final tasks?
I'd say it was about 10 weeks. Yeah. And these are upperclassmen too, so over the years they've had opportunities to do versions, I'm guessing, of this, you know, in the art classes, music class, probably what they come in from elementary school as well. And so they have 10 weeks time to eventually put, so I have like dates, like this is due on this date, you know, kind of give them down the road, like even though this isn't due for a while yet, these are kind of the dates that they are due.
These are your own, this is your own classroom stuff. This, at my school we do a lot of team teaching. So this is just your own thing that you're in your own class.
Yeah, this is my own classroom. And so some of the ideas other teachers tweak and use in their classroom, and you know, I take some of what they do in their classroom and use in ours. I mean, in the book you received today, it talks about professional learning communities, and I think that's a word that's been around for a long time, the PLCs, and you should think of today as a professional learning community. Ideally, you're broken up into these groups, getting their emails. I'm going to put my email up there as well. And what is it that you do in your school that we can apply to our school? I mean, our goal at my school has always been, when the new person gets hired, we can give them, hey, you're teaching world studies. Here's a binder of events, things we've done in world studies over the years. We've been talking about it and sort of doing it for 12 years, almost. And we still don't have a complete binder. I mean, and that's part of the problem, you know. And so the idea is, like, even if we can get like 2 or 3 things that's going to help that new teacher, or things that we think are really powerful that are help our students, and we see that, you know, there's growth in our students, that's what we try to put in for them. All right. Anyone else? Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot more, and I'm disappointed in myself. They gave me a timer before. They said I should consider using it so that I wouldn't get off task. And it was actually really cool. On PowerPoint. Yeah. Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yeah.
How do you evaluate all these disparate projects?
Oh, so what I don't have included there are rubrics. There's all sorts of rubrics in terms of what the students did. So in our salon, you know, how are they interacting with the other students? So much like I was doing right now, kind of walking around, seeing what's going on, trying to ultimately, if I see the gentleman here isn't saying anything at all, kind of prod him and say, you know, what else can you contribute to the group? That oh, there should be 2 sheets. Yes. Sorry, there's 2 sheets. Oh, there should be 2, right? Yes. Yeah, there's 2 sheets. So one set at the top says task design prompt, and then the other says quick and easy task design checklist. You guys have, everyone has a copy. I made 50 copies, so there should be plenty for everyone there. All right. Unfortunately, we only have 45 minutes left. This didn't quite go the way that I planned, and I apologize. But hopefully, at least you guys were able to talk to one another. So the goal here, I think, for this to be meaningful for most of you, is to say, hey, over the next 2 weeks, I plan on covering X, whatever X may be. And now you're at a table with other individuals who might be covering X, or have already covered X, or have ideas about X. Right? And then writing that down, and then just kind of going through the process here. In the past, when I've taught topics above, whatever that is, X, this is how I've done it. It doesn't have to be something 2 weeks from now, but sometimes if you feel like, hey, I'm doing this really in a short period of time, you might focus. You might say, when we get back from winter break, here's what I'm covering, and kind of focus from that point. And then using the individuals around you as a resource, as well as myself. I am by no means some sort of expert teacher. I was just the guy they chose to come here and do this. I honestly feel that any one of us could come here and do this type of thing. I mean, when we look at, all of us think of stuff from someone else's point of view. And just getting our students to start thinking about things in that way. All right? So, if the goal here is to try to come up with something with your groups, it's for the individual, brainstorm, like you could say, hey, I have to cover the Civil War between now and winter break. Anyone have ideas of what I could do to cover this? All right? And then the second sheet is a checklist. And as they said downstairs, you won't necessarily cover or check off every single thing. I mean, if you were to compare this to the task that example task that I gave you, I probably can't cross off every single thing here. And that's okay. I mean, one of the steps is the action step. If by the end, You know, do students, are they taking action, like going out there and changing the world? If they are, that's fantastic. I mean, with this upperclassmen group, when we start talking about some of these things, at the end of the school year, and because it's mostly because they're seniors in the class, I do a project that I call it, why should I care? Why do I give a damn? Like, what's going on in the world that you want me, but also the rest of your classmates to know about? You know, the fact that there's this collection of plastic bottles and waste in the Pacific that's the size of Texas. I had no idea that that was taking place. I mean, there's so much going on in the world. And a student tell us all about this. Like, they had kind of given them that idea of like, you're taking ownership of this. You're going to take these skills. You're going to present to the rest of us. Yeah.
You may specific like go-to websites for current events and global history.
I like to go into the UN website actually. I mean, I think that's like the most interesting one for me, just because there's a lot of things that you read there that that you don't see necessarily in like the Tribune. I mean, the New York Times is a good one too, obviously. I occasionally will peruse, like, I have an iPad here, and I do like the Atlantic. I just started downloading all the free app stuff that I didn't actually have to pay for, and sometimes going through there, and then I copy and paste it, you know, like, oh, this is what I'm going to talk about later on, steal the idea, plagiarize it, you know, and give it to myself. I mean, they can see like who the author was, that type of thing. But the UN website is honestly the best one that is quick and easy. And then, you know, like, so it's just, regardless of your conservative, liberal, you know, Huffington Post reader or not, I tell my kids, like, just go ahead and listen to AM 820, AM 560. You know, like, here are two very different views on what's going on. You know, just like the simplest thing, like the shooting of at the White House, like the 2 bullets they recently found. How did one station talk about this, and how did the other station talk about it? The same event. Like Barack Obama isn't doing his job. This is why people are going. You know, whatever it is. I mean, you know, I'm even making my kids right now look at the governor's race or the GOP race, and you're doing Ron Paul and you're doing Michelle Bachmann and you're doing Mitt Romney, like within groups there, and look at their stance, like what they believe in, and now write me a stump speech for Michigan, and now do one for Arizona, or New Hampshire, Iowa, or Florida. You know, start thinking about some of the stuff in that point of view. Or if you're doing, and this is something I stole from a workshop that I had gone to a while ago, putting individuals on trial. You know, Peter the Great. What made him so great? You know, so like you're going to prosecute Peter the Great because he called himself great, and what did he do? Was what he did really that great or not? And the other table over here is going to defend him. And here are the list of witnesses. You know, are you going to be a peasant that was under Peter's rule, and how is your life portrayed? And then kind of, you know, and that's a point of view, right? Here's how this group of society looked at this great leader. Yeah, sorry.
If I could generalize this, then would it be true to say that the goal is to create a task or a set of a problem which requires the student, you know, almost inherently to succeed at it, it would require looking at perspectives, gathering evidence, you know, the competencies that are involved here, and then assessing that. And it could be, I mean, the content, the scenario, you know, could be whatever. It could be based on student interest, could be current affairs or whatever, or whatever you have to cover.
Yeah.
Right. As long as you're creating the need to you know, go through these steps.
Yeah, and I think ultimately creating a student that starts looking at things just from another perspective. When an event takes place, you know, okay, here's how it affected this person, but how did this affect someone else?
Yes, but also to communicate it effectively.
Right.
And use evidence.
Exactly.
To be accurate and you know, integrity of your research. I mean, so in a sense, those are the elements that.
Yeah, and I feel that in general, most of us already do a lot of that, and now it's being more deliberate about it. Almost looking back at this track, like, did my task, you know, was it clearly stated? I think in general, we figure they are, but then if you read it as the student's perspective, like, is this clearly stated or not? Or, you know, was it relevant to what was in the instructional unit? I mean, I do world studies, and we're supposed to do the dawn of man to modern day somehow, right, in 38 weeks.
Right.
How much history does a kid need to know? I don't know. I think that if we can touch on certain themes, possibly in history, and then make that connection to today, I think it ends up having, and that's how, so like, you know, when I assign kids to different GOP candidates, it's actually in my world studies class. Looking at it, like here we talked about government, here was the Egyptian government, the Romans, the Greeks, and so on and so forth. And, well, how does government affect you today? You know, did you breathe today? Did you text someone, tweet or Twitter, whatever, you know, tweeted someone? Like, all that stuff is regulated by government, right? And, like, whoever the next GOP candidate is could potentially be your president. And so, start thinking about it from there, what they're doing. Yeah.
Do you ever think that when you're doing this, recognizing perspectives, global competence approach, that you're perhaps focusing too much on opinionating and commentating and not enough on basic knowledge and contextualization? Like you're asking students to have opinions about something that they don't really know that much about.
Well, I think that's where like the research portion comes into play. It's not just like, hey, this is what I think about this, or this is what I think she's going to think about this, but that's where the evidence like supports.
But if they're just kind of touching on these things, and then but the point of the exercise becomes, I want to hear what you think. Do you think there's a danger in there?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I think we're trying to give our students the skills to support whatever it is that they say, and I think that's what we wanted, like in the citizen of somebody. Like, could there be the danger in parents like, I don't want you teaching I've had parents say, like, I don't want my kid learning about all these human rights violations that have taken place in Rwanda or in Bosnia. Like, this is too intense for my kid. Like, well, they signed up for 20th century global conflicts. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, and I did actually, instead of reading this entire book, break it up into smaller sections for not everyone to read. But I mean, yeah, there's always, I guess, that danger.
I guess I was going to say, I think that's a really interesting point. But I also think that they're going to have opinions no matter what. So at least if we can deal with them and then shape how it is that they actually form them or challenge them, that becomes important in the process of the historical timeline.
Well, my concern was also coming to my mind because of it sounds like they're doing a lot of their own research, and they're going to be a common knowledge base that they're all drawing from. They have the ability to go out and find things, some things very polemically charged, especially if they have access to the internet. I don't know, it just seems like you can't stop them from doing that, but maybe you should steer them towards what you would teach them in the classroom and say, this is our common knowledge base from which you're going to draw, not what you're going to find on Wikipedia or not what you're going to find on someone's blog and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, this is like a project that kind of encompasses, it's based on everything we've done beforehand, right? And so the project I gave you there is a pretty extensive project, but we had spent 10 weeks looking at the start of the Cold War and point of view, so that when they read Winston Churchill's speech on the Iron Curtain speech, they also got to read Joseph Stalin's reply in the Pravda, and to see where his point of view is and where Winston Churchill's point of view. And then ideally they'd start to see that, hey, both these guys have common goals, they have common concerns. And this is like where you do like the Venn diagram, right? Like here in the middle, put down their common goals or common concerns. They're not all going to be the same, but you can start to see some of that. So we build a lot on that, and then this is kind of my final task, I guess you could say. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So when you do a task like the one that you gave us a plan for, I mean, this is in the context of a class that moves chronologically, right? So if you're using a project like if you're looking at various current media sources to see how they covered an issue differently, in what context would you use that, say, in a world history class, or would you usually only use that in a current events class?
I like to do like what we've all heard, like history repeats itself, right? Like, and then in summer school, that type of joke. But ultimately, if you were to take like a freshman or sophomore, whatever age level, and say, find an event that's taken place during your lifetime, and then find that same event or a version of that took place 60 years ago during your grandparents' lifetime, let's say, or 100 years ago. I mean, I think you can start. I try to make those connections. So, like when I did the government stuff, we're going to look at religions next, and we're going to see like how religion shapes society, but also how conflict evolves because of religion, right? Points of view, and then look at just today. Does religion play into wars? And so I try to make those connections whenever possible. And then at the end of freshman year, they do that history repeats itself, like find this event. You know, so industrialization, child labor laws, so on and so forth. It's like, well, wow, these great laws were created a long time ago, but let's look at India, our children working and making bricks for your beautiful home, or, you know, that type of thing. And this is stuff like they've come up with. But just trying to give them some of that foundation. I've spoken even more than I was supposed to. So now I'm getting... Yeah. So maybe we could spend the next half hour, which definitely... We could come up, maybe within your group, like here's something that we all teach in common, here's how we can maybe revisit how we teach it, or steal some ideas, borrow some ideas from everyone else. And I'll just kind of circulate here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. If I could get one representative from each table, you don't have to stand up here, but you can kind of read off what we have here, or what you and your table mates put down right here. And then the rest of us will be paying close attention, because one of those delegates is going to represent this group downstairs. And you'll all decide who that person is. So we can start with this table right here.
Yeah, go ahead.
How quickly, everyone.
Okay, we came away with the following. We want to give students more opportunities to express new ideas through guided research. We understand that different perspectives, we want students to understand different perspectives by comparing different historical contexts. We would like for our students to take action. We would like for our students to understand what global competencies we are already using. We are teaching through social studies matrix provided, and what we are not doing yet.
All right, thank you. Next group, let's go right here.
Yeah, I'm the only one kind of in the room who is delving into more early childhood. So, you know, young children they don't have a perspective. They're building that perspective. Their personality and values and all of that stuff has not really become a stable part of their consciousness. And so when we're talking about perspective specifically, and across the board, the matrix doesn't seem to have it needs a supplement for early childhood. And really taking the things, for example, in social studies, taking things from their everyday lives, like water, or like their garbage, and following it through and bringing it across disciplines and kind of looking at it from different ways. And it can definitely, you know, be done, but it would be nice to have a little bit more. Because also the other reason this is really important is because their kids are most malleable in their beginning years, because they are still developing all of this, and so their ways of thinking are becoming, you know, a part of them.
Group behind you.
Well, we had a lot of different discussions going, but I guess the overall concept that we came across was the idea of having authentic student work or assignments that are created in the classroom, so that from there we can bring in not only the students' perspectives, but obviously take that idea and branch it out into different topics or subjects or whatnot.
So we wanted them to think about it, their class is kind of like a chess move, like moving 3 steps ahead and not really thinking about what's happening in the present. And we use the example about iPhones, like everyone is always using their iPhones, but do we really know and understand that children from Africa and India really go through and dig out those mining materials? And do they really understand that when we're done with them, because the new iPhone just came out, that the old iPhones go back to India for them to dig out a little piece, and then we leave all their garbage there? I don't know if our kids really understand the importance of our consumerism happens and has its effects on other countries.
Yeah, and the implication of like how you benefit from it. What there's an implication of the last table.
We really kind of focused on just learning about the material in the Red Cross. Chicago Red Cross,
just Red Cross. Yeah, I'm presenting this afternoon, but we had more questions, so I answered.
There's a lot of great material in here, and categorized primary and secondary sources, and secondary sources that are short but with a lot of substance too, for some of our students who are not strong readers, around essential questions that I think will engage students.
Okay, thank you. Now, who's going to represent this breakout session downstairs? Does someone want to volunteer? All right.
No, I politely decline. Thank you.
There you have 3 supporters. Anyone else want to support her?
Because they don't want.
Anyone else? 4. There we go. All right, we got it. There. Thank you all for coming. I hope you got something out of this when it's all said and done.